Welcome to Powered by Authenticity. I hope everybody is having a great week. I'm really excited about today's episode. Today, Karen Camacho is with me. And Karen, hello, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. Karen, you and I met at HIMSS in Chicago. It seems like a moment ago, but it was back in April.
Yes, it seems like, a while back, but it really wasn't that long ago, I guess now. But
yeah, it was a great time. It was great to be back in Chicago. It was fantastic. So
it's a great event.
Yeah. So Karen, you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I live in a small suburb of Buffalo, New York called Orchard Park, home of the Buffalo Bills.
Go Bills!
Go Bills! I actually grew up here for most of middle school and high school and part of my 20s. I'm married. I have two teenagers, a 14 and a 15-year-old. And I work for a company called PointClickCare. PointClickCare is really, for a long time, has been considered the leader in long-term care, but we really sort of branched out to be sort of the leader in interoperability, even in the acute space as well. I work for a department called Product. I'm the manager of what's called the Product Escalation team.
Awesome.
So I manage sort of the high impact, high touch issues that our product team faces.
That is a 24/7 job.
It can be, yes. It can be, but never a dull moment. I never go to work and think, gee, there's really nothing going on. It's always busy.
Yeah, and I
love it.
That's fantastic. And PointClickCare is a Canadian run organization, correct?
Yes, we actually do have a few offices in the U.S., but our home base is in Mississauga, Ontario.
Awesome. Yeah, I worked with PointClickCare when I was doing a project for Bon Secours in Tampa. So they had a long-term care facility. So I got to know the product there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Well, we're so glad you're here. Welcome to the podcast. As normal, we like to get things kicked off with just a lighthearted kind of icebreaker type of conversation. So local restaurants. So we're in Batavia. We're close by. Producer Ken's here today. Hi, Producer Ken.
Hello, hello.
And Karen, what are some great restaurants that you love? What are some of your favorite local spots?
So in my hometown where I live in Orchard Park, Fuji Grill, which has the just very best sushi. And I'm a little bit of a sushi snob. I lived in Japan when I was a little girl, so I really like good sushi, but they make just fantastic fresh sushi. I'm a big fan of that. I love some of the old favorites downtown in Buffalo. Well, I say downtown, really more North Buffalo, like Hutch's and Oliver's are just standbys, but again, never had a bad meal ever in my life there. And then sort of my guilty pleasure is probably Anderson's roast beef. I could eat Anderson's roast beef and ice cream. So yummy and so tasty and so Buffalo in so many ways. So
Anderson's custard is just fantastic. Oh my gosh.
The best custard ever.
And Fuji's I've had their sushi. It is fantastic.
Yes, and I'm very lucky because the one in Orchard Park is very close to my house. So, it's the kind of place where it's a 5-minute drive and I can just stop and get takeout if we really want it. So I feel really lucky to be so close.
Oh my gosh, I'm jealous. Producer Ken, favorite restaurant locally?
Well, she's got me nodding over here with Fuji because when I went to Niagara University, we had a Fuji right on Niagara Falls Boulevard. So it was just a quick trip over anytime. Sticking with the sushi, I love our Yumi Asian Bistro here in Batavia. Never had a bad meal there at all. But I think my go-to is usually Eli Fish Brewing. Any of your typical bar food you can get in there, some of the oddballs like jambalaya and assorted different foods. Awesome. Anytime we're not sure what to eat, it's usually Eli Fish.
They're good. Karen, you've come to Batavia quite a bit, right?
Yes, I was actually out there last week for a Girl Scout meeting. it's funny. I'm heavily involved in the local Boy Scouts as well, and the Batavia Boy Scout Council actually just merged with the Greater Niagara Frontier Council, which was the Buffalo Council, and it's all now called the Western New York Council. So there's quite a lot now that's happening out in Batavia for Boy Scouts. There's a number of events there. The camps that are owned by the council out in Batavia are now part of that whole consortium. So I expect to be out there quite a bit more.
Awesome. Yeah. Some great restaurant suggestions. I also want to give a shout out to Romans. So, Karen, if you're ever close by, Romans is fantastic.
Okay. Noted.
All right. Well, as part of our conversation and getting to know each other, we were talking about how sometimes women take breaks in their careers, whether it's to have a family or, kind of just the necessity that arises for us to take breaks in our career, and how coming back from that and having that time where we're focused on other priorities, one, it's important for us to be able to have that, but it can be hard to come back and know where to go in your career. So, Karen, would you like to share your story about the time that you kind of took that break in your career and kind of how you got into nursing informatics and, moving forward in more of that technical field?
Sure. So I'll start with talking about the break I took. I moved into nursing informatics really by accident. I always had like a love of computers. My father was an engineer. He bought us a computer when I was quite young because he sort of saw the writing on the wall about that. So I was always relatively tech savvy. So in the 1990s, I was actually working in a hospital in Florida that was 100% electronic documentation in their ICUs, which was, this is the mid-90s, which was very, very rare. It was also integrated with their monitoring systems as well. So if you had, for example, blood pressures readings or heart rate readings, you could just pull the data out of, and document it basically out of the monitors. It would just sort of auto-populate. Now, the documentation was very rudimentary compared to what you would actually document now. It was a lot of mostly data and numbers versus actual like narrative notes, for example. But it was very tech heavy, and we actually implemented physician order entry while I was at that hospital. So I started, it just sort of was a fluke that I ended up working at this hospital that was very invested in technology. And I ended up working in software implementation for mostly pharma, basically because I had an aptitude for this kind of technology and was asked to be on projects and sort of pulled into implementations, and then eventually got offered a job during an implementation of a drug dispensing cabinet by a very small company called McKesson, which is actually a huge company.
Yep.
Right. So, it really wasn't a planned thing for me as a nursing student. I didn't really know anything about informatics. I never, we didn't use any computers when I was in nursing school at all. I wrote papers on my computer, but other than that, we didn't use computers in school at all. We didn't really use they didn't even have automatic blood pressure cuffs or any of that stuff. Everything had to be manual. This is old school nursing. And I worked in implementation for a couple of years. And when I decided to have a family, it wasn't really a planned leaving the workplace. Right? I didn't expect to go and not come back. However, back in the dark ages of the mid 2000s, even if you were a remote employee, which I was for most of the 2000s, there was no ability to just work from home like you can now with Zoom, right? So if you're not at a customer site, you're really not working, right? There's not really an implementation model circa 2006, 2007 that involves a lot of remote work because the technology wasn't in place to facilitate that. The training, the configurations, the go live support just wasn't there. So I left mainly because I had a job that didn't have a place for me. I was a pregnant woman who eventually at some point during her pregnancy couldn't travel.
Yep.
And once I couldn't travel, it became sort of a non-issue. And then after I had my son, I ended up pregnant right afterwards again with number 2. So it wasn't ever sort of, once I left, it wasn't like by choice. It was more of a, well, you've been out on disability for a while now. So, and your time is up. So, it wasn't a conscious decision to not go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of made for me, but I was really okay with it because I was having 2 kids and I was ready to, I was sort of going to focus on them. And for a few years I did. And then, I was sort of pushed back into the workforce with a jolt. In 2012, I lost my husband, and with him, I lost my health insurance because he held the health insurance. He owned his own business, and I immediately had to go back to work, like overnight. Had to figure out what I was going to do, where I was going to work, and that was a shock to the system. I had been a stay-at-home mom now for over 4 years at this point, and I had to figure out, well, how do I fit now into the workplace, into the technology sector? Like where does my skill set, my 5-year-old implementation skill set fit with the way companies are doing online trainings, or even just what products they're using? They've changed so much.
Yep.
The softwares have changed. Do I even have the knowledge or understanding of what's going on, or has it passed me by? These are the things that I was thinking of when I was thinking that I needed to get a job.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, I think, something that women now still face, right? Like, it's, as much as we have remote work, there's times where, once you step away and come back, if there's been a gap, or honestly, Karen, I think about it too, is if you're mid-career and you say, is this really the right path for me still?
Yep.
Should I be thinking about a job change? Should I be thinking about a pivot in my career? So
Yep.
How did you get to tech? Like, what were those steps that you got to be able to decide, okay, I think this is the path that I want to take?
Well, so the very first thing I did was say, I still have a nursing license,
Mm-hmm.
right? I still have a nursing license. I never gave it up. So the very first path I went down was, what can I do with my nursing license?
Yep.
Right? Because one of the things one of my nursing instructors drilled into my head is, you never let that expire. You always keep it somewhere. Right? And at the time I lived in Florida, but my family was in New York, and I never let my New York nursing license lapse. I faithfully renewed it every few years. Just, it wasn't expensive, and I sort of thought, well, what if I have to go back and take care of family or move there, so I'd always kept it up. Well, that sort of became my initial plan. I was going to go get a job doing something that required a nursing license. So I started pursuing things like case management jobs with insurance companies, which offered us a level of flexibility because many of them were home-based. And I was thinking in terms of childcare. I'm now a single parent. I really don't actually have any, I really almost didn't have any assets actually after my husband passed away. So I really was starting with nothing. So how can I minimize my expenses around childcare, which was something I'd never had to pay for other than a babysitter, and maximize my return on this, this degree that I got and this license that I have. I did actually get one of those jobs, but they were, they sort of warned me. They were like, are you going to be happy just sitting home after working the career you've worked, where you've been out in the, in the world traveling? Because the late 90s, early 2000s implementation model was heavy travel, heavy on-site, right? So as I was looking at jobs, I found a job that was a system administrator job for a home health agency, and really was an office job, which I'd never worked in my life. I'd either worked in a hospital, or I'd worked remotely for a corporation or two, out of my house and traveled to the home office or to customer sites like hospitals. So I had zero experience of like going to an office every day, showing up and doing, an 8-hour day and then going home and structuring my life around that. But when I went and interviewed for the system administrator job, the woman who interviewed me was just so encouraging and said, "You're wasted doing, any other work other, like just plain old nursing work," because she asked me flat out, she's like, "Well, what kind of jobs are you looking for? You're coming back to the workforce." And she was super impressed with my implementation experience. And while I had worried that wasn't transferable to, working as a system administrator for a software that I'd never heard of at that point,
Yep.
She was like, "You'll pick it up." She's like, "You can actually help us roll this out." And I think the piece that I hadn't really thought of was, if you've done implementation work, or you've even been tangentially involved in some sort of project at the company you work at, you've got implementation experience. And in that respect, you are valuable because you know how to problem solve and you know how to implement, just even internally within your own company, process change, right? Yep. And process change is a huge piece of implementation. It's sometimes the hardest part for people to accept. But if you've done it even just in your own home or work life or personal life, you've implemented some sort of process change successfully, you can transfer that skill to working for a software company or implementing a software within your organization or within your department. It's change is hard for people, but if you know how to drive change, that in itself is a success factor for you. And not everybody welcomes new change with software.
Yep.
It's always there's always someone who's kicking and screaming. But I found that job, even though it was an office job, the structure of it actually, I think, lent itself to a better work-life balance, because I think with the home position, it would have been more mushy when work started and ended.
Yeah.
Whereas with that office job with set hours, I knew exactly what time I was supposed to be there and what time I was able to leave, and I was able to structure my childcare schedule, my child's schooling, my pickups. I actually built whole processes around how to feed 2 children in the car after picking them up from the after school program. I think the level of structure of that job, the 9 to 5-ishness of it,
yep,
forced me to sort of push myself into a very structured life that actually, I think, helped my kids thrive. I think if they'd been running around at home with me trying to work, it would have been harder.
Yeah, and it's still relevant today, right? Like, you look at how people's lives changed very quickly over the past 3 years, and yeah, to your point, the smushy or mushy start and end times, that is really stressful, because we're never getting downtime. So I like the way that you say that with the structure that helps everybody. That does help kids thrive.
My kids still ask for dinner in the car. Can I have dinner in the car? Because I actually used to make dinner. I would make dinner the night before and put it in containers and take it to work with me, and then I would heat it heat it at my office and pick them up from school if I knew it was going to be, late-ish, 5:30. Yeah. And they would sit and eat their little dinners in the car, so they wouldn't be screaming and hungry by the time we got home in traffic. So,
well, and I think so. Out of necessity, you now have memories. I mean, your kids are still asking for that, and I remember. So I did something similar in those early 2000s, where I was working with pharmaceutical companies. And I was doing CRM implementations. So I would go on the road for, a week at a time. And, it's tough, right? It's crazy. So when you get to a position that allows you not only to be able to continue to grow, but also to put that structure in place, it feels great. And, your kids thrive from it. Seeing you be able to be successful, and now you've built these memories, and those kids are going to remember eating dinner in their car with their mom all the time.
Yep. And I think that we really enjoy that piece of it, like that little sort of like historical memory of how we survived it, because in some ways it was traumatic for my kids too. They lost their dad, so they were sort of coping with that at the same time of this completely new life where mom is gone all day and then comes to get them. So I think it was trying to make, sometimes, I always hear stories of how people survive things by turning things into games with their children, or survive traumatic events by sort of, laughing through the pain kind of thing. I feel like sometimes that's one of the things we all did. Yeah. So.
Oh, I just amazing how you were able to step it through, take your nursing degree, leverage it, and really find something that you became passionate about and still are passionate about through your work at PointClickCare. So the transferable skills piece really is interesting to me, because I look out, all the time, and actually I've had a couple of people reach out to me that, I'm thinking about changing direction, but I don't have any experience. But I think, to your point with the process, even at home, you can usually find, if you're passionate about something, you're probably already doing it even in your personal life. So, those transferable skills for you, time management, project process management, I'm assuming you still leverage those today.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, now, of course, my days are much more, they're extremely structured, because I have a heavy meeting load, which is my own design, honestly, in some ways, simply because much of the work that I do, like, if we're really going to get it accomplished, we need to actually talk about it.
Yep.
When you're dealing with, some sticky challenges, sometimes it's easier to just spend 20 minutes on the phone with a couple of people and get to the bottom of something, and so everyone can sort of move on and do their work. That makes for a very meeting-heavy schedule. And then, of course, there's the unexpected stuff. So I find the work-life balance can be a little bit of a challenge if I don't allow myself to say no sometimes to things. Also, the nature of what we do, too, there's a little piece of incident customer response to what my team does. We're considered what's called the voice of the customer in product. So it's our job to speak for customers to product to make sure that things get changed or rectified to customer needs. And that means that sometimes it can be late nights, it can be weekends, if we need to do what's right for the customer. So it sometimes leads to a little bit of lousy work-life balance, but I'm really lucky. The company I work for really makes it easy for us to take a step back and take time if we need it. They've really been amazing in that respect, especially during the COVID days. We were so blessed to really work for a company that kept saying to us, "Are you guys okay? What do you need?" While we were watching our customer base deal with, an unmitigated tragedy, in terms of the staffing issues, the loss of friends and family, the loss of beloved residents in some of our long-term care facilities. Long-term care residents in the world of post-acute care really are family. They're not just patients. So, and that's their home that they live in. So I think the work-life balance piece has been, this is kind of going to sound crazy, but it's been easier in the last few years than it was back when I was, back 10 years ago, when I was a newly widowed mom trying to manage everything, because my kids are older, they can handle more, and they're more self-sufficient. But also, my life doesn't have to be so regimented. I have a team that is amazing, that supports me. I have leadership that's really great and supports me. And if something comes up, I can take that time and step away. 10 years ago, I actually was in a car accident the first year after I lost my husband and had to take a week with a broken arm. And I didn't have health insurance at that point because, of course, it hadn't kicked in yet, right?
Yep.
So I had to take a week unpaid with 2 small children. And then I had to find someone to drive me to work for 3 months. So on top of the tragedy of losing my husband, I also broke my arm, which was just like adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
And that, the necessity of keeping that incredibly ridiculous structure to my life came into play, where I literally had to get up at the very same time every morning and make sure that I was ready because someone was picking me up and getting my kids on the bus to school and this and that. And I think I have more flexibility now. I have more flexibility now for that kind of curveball than I did then. You know, a life curveball would not be as that big a deal in the place I am right now as it was in 2012, 2013.
Yeah, I think you are right on with that. The past few years have shown us that not only can people still be productive in a flexible environment, but people actually need that flexible environment. And I want to take a step back because something you said it resonated with me. In thinking about your community of patient population that you support, it was one of the hardest hit when it comes to COVID. You know, I think I remember I was actually in Seattle when COVID started and thinking about the nursing homes there and the news. You know, that I'm sure, just knowing your population of patients that you're supporting, it sounds like your company really stepped up to support you guys and make sure that you were okay. Were there any males that took a moment? Because allyship in the way of support is so important. So did you have any strong allies in the workplace, just knowing that you were supporting this product in a patient population that was being just so impacted by COVID?
Yeah. Well, at the time, my manager was actually a male. He actually recruited me from the company I used to work for, and he's actually a nurse, which is fascinating to me because, you know, male nurses are, at least in my age cohort, are sort of fewer and far between than they are now.
Yep.
And he's the reason I came to PointClickCare. He really pushed me to get out of my comfort zone and take on a different role. But he also was the voice of reason throughout COVID because he led the Tiger team that we did to sort of do our internal and external response. Like, how do we support our internal employees and how do we support our customers, right? Also, our chief medical officer was also incredibly supportive during COVID and very, very much the voice of reason in terms of what we were and weren't going to do as a company to put our staff at risk. You know, Canada was much more conservative than the U.S., and we sort of took our lead very much from them. Even though our chief medical officer is U.S. based, he was, you know, they were very cautious with what they had their staff do. There was, you know, like any of the on-site stuff we did for a period of time, there was testing and anyone could opt out of it, you know, of being in person. They were really very supportive. They really pushed us to take time off because, of course, as soon as COVID hit, no one was taking any vacation time because where is there to go? And they were like, you still need to step back, right? Like, you still need to step away and go, you know, be with your family, you know, take a break, because the stories we were getting from the field were so challenging. And my team personally, we're not typically super customer facing unless we're dealing with a problem, and you know, but I did actually go to a facility during COVID that was actually in the middle of an outbreak because we had a problem, and I was close enough to be able to drive there and actually just see it with my own eyes, because we were having trouble getting, they're busy. They've got stuff going on. They've, COVID patients. And instead of waiting for them to sort of come to us and say, hey, this is our problem, we said, well, why don't one of us just get in the car and drive over there and have them show us, because it's more convenient for them too. We're not disrupting them to try and schedule a call or whatever. And I really felt for the people working in facilities. One of the things that came out of this too was, you saw a lot of vilification in the media around the role that long-term care facilities played in COVID. And I feel like it's really important that those that don't know the industry or understand the industry realize that, these, and I think I've said this already, but these are just more than residents to the people that take care of them. They are they're family in some ways. So, but I was really grateful to the male leaders in my life who really stepped up during the early days of COVID and said, we're going to make sure that we're all going to get through this together, and led things like small groups to talk about our challenges, really sort of stepped up and made sure that we all had a place to vent our feelings, even, or talk about what our, or get our challenges or our customers' immediate challenges dealt with in a timely manner, fast-tracked some things to just get people up and going. So
amazing. And what I love about what you just said is that people were empowered to be able to lean on their nurturing human side as leaders versus, other times we don't necessarily see that, right? And there are times where it's actually, women are put into a stigma where you shouldn't be that nurturing, and you shouldn't show that in the workplace. But I love the fact that you actually had your male leadership come and want that for you guys as employees.
Yeah, and it's very much it's a culture where I work too. It's not just lip service. There's actually definitely, especially in tech, there's definitely been a recognition of the lack of women in tech just in general in the industry, especially with engineers, for example. And there's been a concerted effort to rectify that with hiring, with communication. DEI isn't just lip service at PointClickCare. It's a way of life. It's a way of working. And beyond just, male, female ratios, in terms of how we spend our social time even. They provide monthly events for us. We've had small support groups that we've done. Even down to the food in our cafeteria, being the focus of, for example, like I think in May we had Southeast Asian food to support that, Southeast Asia. It's absolutely more than just, a line on a box you check, for example, as a company. It colors the way they approach everything they do. And it's pretty awesome.
That is amazing. So in thinking about that makes you feel valued. I'm assuming not only valued, but heard, appreciated, and the desire to want to get up and go to work in the morning is, and from a productivity perspective as well, it's probably there because you have that type of culture. That's amazing.
It's kind of amazing too, not by design, but I manage an entirely female team in tech. Right now, that's not because I didn't hire any male. It just has worked out that way, that I have an entirely female team. I didn't always have, but I just happen to right now. Every single one of my employees is female. And that is so rare. And to me, so special. I value each one of the amazing women that work for me. They all have their unique skill sets. Mm-hmm. They're all very technically strong. Some of them are nurses. One of them is an engineer. They're just an amazing group of women. And it's a little bit unicorny, to have a bunch of women who can speak SQL to a bunch of engineers, but also, sit on a call with a customer and talk through their billing workflow. It's kind of amazing. And I sort of sometimes pinch myself, like, how did I get so lucky to have, to have a job in, what's commonly considered a male-dominated industry, product and engineering.
Yep.
It's pretty amazing.
That's great. How many women report on your team?
I have 4.
Amazing.
Hoping to get more. Hoping to grow.
No, that's fantastic. It's great to hear that, because there's still a lot of times where I dial into a technical call and I'm still one of the only females on there. I had a leader last year. I went to do a Microsoft 365 transition call, and they're like, "Well, you should probably have somebody on there to help you." I'm like, "I don't really need. I can talk cloud migration. I'm okay." You can, why don't you sleep an extra hour that day? So it's great to hear that you have so many tech savvy women on your team. I love it.
It's been amazing and so rewarding. There's nothing I love better than having women, also elevating them.
Yes.
It's really important to me that they have a path, a path up as well. And that's sort of something else I'm working on right now is, we've been sort of trying to define the path for my team and the path up. And that's super important to me.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that you're supporting these other women in that path up. I've seen also women go the other way when they're, leading other women. And, I love to see, that lifting one another, go for the reach assignment, supporting the reach assignment, finding the path for them and their next steps. So hats off to you, Karen, for being a fantastic women leader and showing that. It's fantastic. So in thinking about the kind of the ebb and the flow of your career, and I'm really sorry about the loss of your husband and having to so quickly put yourself on a path. But if women are out there right now and they're facing either a similar situation or they're even mid-career or younger and just trying to figure out what to do with life, what is really some words of advice you would give to other women out there?
So I think don't limit yourself to what you think you can get when you're looking for a career change, or you're coming back after a time. I think my biggest mistake when I was looking for a job, I think I would have made it a lot easier on myself if I had not just discounted a whole bunch of things because I thought, I've been gone too long, or I've never done that. Women, literally everybody, but women in particular, have skill sets that transfer not just to whatever they got a degree in. It's whatever experience you have. It doesn't mean that you have to go back and do that exact same thing or find that exact same job or even use that nursing degree, for example, in the way that you were taught the nursing degree had to be. One of my favorite things to tell nursing graduates, who I love talking to, is don't just think about working med-surg in a hospital as, your future, or working at the bedside as your future, because there are so many areas that a nursing degree can be helpful in. I mean, data science,
Yep.
Nursing research, there's, and then anything related to technology. I mean, there's everything from, the wearables that are out there to, even pharma still is extremely busy. I think that if you think about your nursing degree or whatever healthcare degree you have, and just picture it as what the internship you had in college was, or what the traditional role is of the person who graduates with that is the only thing you can do, you're making a mistake, because there's so much more you could do. If you had told me that I would be doing now what I am doing when I got out of nursing school, I would have never believed you, because I just thought I was going to go work on a floor and then, I don't know, maybe work my way up to nurse manager someday. And that is not how my career has gone at all. I probably would have made a lousy nurse manager too, because I was entirely too good at telling hospital leadership what I thought they were doing wrong. But I think that you just can't put yourself in a box. You have to really, sort of take the scales off your eyes and look around you at anything that is potentially, your skill set would work for. I mean, there are so many lawyers out there that aren't lawyering and doing other things because, they didn't really like the grind of 80 hours, but they're still using their law degrees for something else. I think in nursing, you sort of have to pay your dues a little bit. It's hard to get a job without like that 1 year of something, 1 year of care. But, I have physicians I work with who aren't taking care of patients. They're building solutions for physicians. So, I mean, it's not all bedpans.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that coming into like a position like yours, having the, you're on the floor, for lack of a better term, helps you understand the output and the impact to a nurse. But, you being able to take that skill set and be able to run with it in a different manner is something that, if somebody in the nursing career field is feeling a little bit stuck, maybe it's time to start looking at, some, to your point, some tech or, data. Everything's about data right now.
Yep.
And that it's definitely a transferable skill set. And, I worked, to your point about physicians, I worked previously with physicians who would actually go in post like Epic implementation and help to provide peer-to-peer remediation training. So if one physician wasn't quite picking up, so to speak, the new system, we could send in a peer, and it was fun to watch because they were using their skill set, but in a matter just completely different than seeing 80 patients in a dermatology center for a day. So it was just it was fun. Yeah,
definitely.
Awesome. Well, I have enjoyed this conversation so much. I love hearing about the work that you're doing and just really everything about, how you have come back from a difficult time. So I think you're a true inspiration to many, Karen. I really do.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And when we started, you talked about your work with the Boy Scouts. Are there any other organizations that you work with or any other local community type of events that you participate with that you'd like to just kind of do an appreciation comment towards today?
Sure. So one of the best things I've ever done was get involved in the Alumni Association for the nursing school I went to. It's called Trocaire College. It's in South Buffalo.
I know Trocaire.
I've been on the alumni board for many, many years now, and I'm super passionate about their mission. They really serve adult learners at Trocaire. It was kind of an odd place for me to go but I was that kid who didn't know what they wanted to be, so I sort of went to school late, and the life-changing careers that people get from their degrees at Trocaire. It's really exciting to watch. Primarily women. I mean, there's men who go to Trocaire too, but there's a lot of women who go to Trocaire, especially for the nursing and the healthcare programs. That place holds a very special place in my heart. I really enjoy. I go to the graduations twice a year, and my favorite thing is to talk to the students before they go out and get their degrees, because they're so excited, and they have those blinged out caps and the best shoes ever. And I'm super passionate about that. The other organization I'm really passionate about is the American Nursing Informatics Association. I've been an ANIA member for a long time now. I'm on the board of the Great Lakes chapter of ANIA, and I found that my connections I've made there and the collaboration within the board, and then the amount of education I've received from attending their conferences, attending webinars, etc., has been phenomenal. It's definitely helped my career. It pushed me to go get my informatics board certification, which I've now maintained for kind of a long time. And their conferences are always, academic but not dry. And every year they get more exciting. I found that their national conference, especially this past year, was absolutely phenomenal. The speakers they had two physicians who talked about hacking medical devices that just, I came away going, wow, what do I need to change? But just, fun and informative. And you walk out of that conference and those interactions with the other members of the American Nursing Informatics Association feeling very energized and ready to go change the world. So I love it.
Awesome. I'll put links to both those in the show notes. Sure. Karen, I actually went to Trocaire
my goodness.
For phlebotomy. I had just had my daughter, and I wanted to go do something different. And so I found Trocaire, and I loved my time there. To your point, it was a group of mostly women, and they were all young moms and just, were trying to figure out life. And Trocaire was a great environment for compassion and caring, and just, a great place to go take a healthcare program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yep. The Sisters of Mercy have just been sort of a pretty big part of my life, I feel, because I've had a long association with the college, but also, they were still very much running the college back when I went there in the 1990s, and sort of their message of service above all has just sort of resonated with me throughout my career. That it's not just about getting a ticket punched, right? It's about giving back as well. So.
Yep. Oh, I love that. Well, Karen, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, of course. I loved it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation. I love just everything about your background, using those transferable skills, the inspiration that you've just been able to provide to, I'm sure, so many that are, facing the similar situation even, or mid-career and just trying to figure out a direction. And, I love your advice. Go outside of the box. And I really appreciate you being here today.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Producer Ken, thanks for being here today.
You got it. And because of your course, I still remember going over the flashcards with you in the car. And I still remember what a butterfly needle is in a sharps container. All because of that.
I love it. I love it. See, they do remember this.
They remember everything, Karen.
Yes, they do.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that you remember that. It's going to be your forte into healthcare. Maybe that's next.
Yeah,
for
there
you.
we go.
All right, Karen, thank you so much. We really appreciate you here on Powered by Authenticity. One last shout out to GoArt here in Batavia, who lets us use their podcast room as a special community service for myself and for Ken and for Powered by Authenticity. So a big shout out to GoArt as well. Karen, when you're in Batavia, stop by, say hi.
I definitely will.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.